Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast with Brian Sherwood Steinberg and Matthew Finney.
Welcome to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. I am the man behind the board, Matthew Finney. Of course, joined this week and every week by Brian Sherwood Steinberg. All those great free daily write-ups over on Sportswagers.ca. Good day, Brian. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing a little better this week, Matt. I'm always doing well. I'm always feeling great, but we rebounded in the NFL, so that was nice to see. But you know what? We always talk about in-game variance and the luck factor in sports betting. You know, Matt, the last couple of days in the NHL, we had Montreal to beat the Islanders. Montreal outshot them 56-24, something like that, and lost 5-4 in overtime. Okay. Tuesday night we had Vegas to beat Nashville. Vegas outshot them, outplayed them, outshot them badly. I think it was 46-25 or something. Outplayed them, was in their end practically the entire night, and we lost that one too. Now, we know the risk. We know that these things are going to happen, right? And when we're betting sports, we accept that risk. It's just like in football. You know, I complain about the refs and I complain about this but we know the risks. Anybody that is betting NFL football, they know that they have to deal with referee calls. They have to deal with a bad call, a pass interference, a phantom flag. They know the risk, and I know the risk too. But it just goes back to the fine line between winning and losing, right? Those two hockey games, we're on the right side of those games, absolutely on the right side of those games. It didn't work out because of the luck factor, because of the in-game variance. So instead of having two winners, this is just a very small sample, right? But it happens all year long in every sport. Instead of having two winners, right, and being up, let's say, 4.5 units or 4.7 units, we had two losers at -4 units. Just two lousy games, Matt. Two lousy games is a swing of almost 9 units. Instead of winning 4.5 to 5 units, we lose 4 in two games that we were absolutely had pegged correctly, but lost. So again, it's a difference of 8.5 to 9 units. And, we have to be fucking honest about sports betting, right? Nobody talks about this shit. Nobody is honest about it, Matt, except for us. Well, I'm sure there's somebody, but, let's be honest. You hear these guys talking on TV and you hear them talking on the radio, and everybody's trying to predict games. Do you ever hear anybody talk about how 95% of all games come down to luck, right? Like, people will say to me, well, what about the Pittsburgh Penguins? They won back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. Are they lucky? Well, they're a good team, but yeah, they're lucky. When you play a 7-game playoff series, 2 or 3 times, and a bunch of games go into overtime, you got lucky. There was a very fine line between the Penguins being eliminated a couple of times, right, and winning the Stanley Cup. Yeah, they're good enough to make the playoffs. Yeah, they're a really good team, but there's a lot of really good teams. And again, there's a fine line between winning and losing, right, which is, again, why we go back to going with the best of it, taking the value, right? And another thing people ask me all the time is, well, how do you differentiate value and picking a game? Like, where is the line there? What is the difference, Like, how do you know what value is? Well, again, when you're taking back inflated points, when there's overreactions to certain teams, to what you just saw, right? Like Atlanta and Philadelphia last weekend was a perfect example of that. We all watched Atlanta dismantle a really good Rams team, and we all watched Philadelphia with Nick Foles look absolutely brutal the last 2 weeks of the season, right? And now Atlanta goes into Philadelphia, a number 1 seed, and they're favored. That's an overreaction, and that's value. It's like in hockey, right? When you have a 50-50 proposition, or maybe the underdog even has a bit of an edge, that's value, right? It's just like you and I, and I mentioned this before, flipping a coin, 100 times or 200 times or 1,000,000 times or 1,000 times, right? If you pay me $1.10 every time for a dollar, if you pay me $1.10 every time I win, and I pay you $1 every time you win, I'm going to come out ahead, right? I may not win that one single flip, but over time, I'm going to come out ahead, right? And the same applies to betting NHL or baseball. Just playing value, that's all, right? Nobody can predict the outcome of games, Hockey is just such a luck-driven sport, and let's be honest about it. You hear these guys talking, right? Like, how many of these guys were talking how good the Islanders were at the beginning of the year, and how good the Rangers are, and how good Nashville, right? And we just kept saying it's luck, it's luck, it's luck, it's luck, it's luck. And now the Islanders can't get out of their own way. The Rangers might be the worst team in hockey. I'm hearing now people talking about how good Minnesota is at home, how well they're playing at home. They're not playing well. They're playing like dregs. They've been playing like dregs all year. They've just been really lucky at home, right? And, you hear these guys talking about, well, this team has to improve the power play if they're going to go far, or the power play struggling, or the penalty killing's got to get better. It's just all bullshit, right? It's all bullshit. It's just people talking about nothing, right? Because, who's going to go online and say, oh, this team has been lucky, this team's been not. Like, nobody says that, but it's the truth. And let's be honest, you take Dallas, for instance, right? Dallas, prior to Tuesday against Detroit, I don't know what happened in that game because I haven't looked it up, but prior to that, they went 5 games without a power play goal. 5 games. The 5 games before that, they scored a power play goal in every game, right? Why? Their power play isn't worse. It's the exact fucking same, right? It's just luck. That's all it is. You take a shot from the point, some guy deflects it and they hope it goes in, or the goalie makes a great save or doesn't or whatever. It's just all luck. That's all it is. So Dallas isn't doing anything different, and you could go up and down the list, right? Edmonton, worst power play at home, or worst penalty killing at home, or whatever. But on the road, they're really good. Why? It's just because they've been luckier on the road than they are at home, and that's all there is to it. And I go back to, Mike Malarkey on Tennessee. Yeah, he's an idiot. He's a really bad coach, right? But he got fired. Well, they said they mutually agreed to part ways, but everybody was criticizing him after the big loss to New England, right? The blowout loss. That's all you hear. They got blown out. They were better off not even making the playoffs than getting blown out like they did against New England, right? They got blown out, right? You know what? That game was 14-7, and Tennessee was moving down, right? They were moving down the field, and they got a ridiculous offensive pass interference call that forced a punt, and New England scored a touchdown. And a couple of drives later, New England was punting at their own 5-yard line when they called a offside or encroachment on Tennessee, which was another ridiculous penalty. And before you knew it, it was 28-7, right? That one play changed the entire landscape of that game. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody is saying a fucking word about that, right? That was the play of the game. Even Tony Romo, later on in the third quarter, he said those were the 2 most important plays of this game. And I'm sure Roger Goodell is going to talk to Tony Romo and say, you don't say those things on network TV, right? And he probably won't say it again. But those 2 plays, those 2 single plays, and we had New England. I'm thrilled. I'm very thrilled, that happened. But if you had Tennessee or you're reading the paper, you forget about that. It's one play and you kind of forget about it, and you're reading, oh, they got blown out, right? They didn't get blown out, The score, yeah, they got blown out, But their will was broken. They would have, they were moving the ball. There's no doubt about it. They scored early. They were up 7-0. They had a good response down 14-7 and moving the chains, right? And then that offensive pass interference call changed absolutely everything. And if you had Tennessee, I feel for you. Well, I don't. That's just the way it is. But it just goes to show you, right, how nobody is honest about this stuff. It's all luck. It's all in-game variance. Some guy tweeted to me or sent me an email the other day, after we went 1-3 in the opening weekend of the playoffs or on one of our bowl days, and said in-game variance, like being sarcastic about it, And actually it is. Every game is in-game variance. Every single fucking game that you watch is in-game variance, whether it's hockey, basketball, football, baseball, whatever it is. It's in-game variance. That's what decides the outcomes. You run into a hot goaltender, like Vegas on Tuesday night in Nashville, 46 shots on net, not one goal. Saros was, he was standing on his. That's in-game variance. There isn't a tout, a person, a handicapper in the world that can predict that stuff. It's in-game variance, right? Very, very, unless it's a complete blowout, Memphis beat UConn on the other night by 40 points, right? Okay, that's not in-game variance. That's a great pick. If you made that pick, good for you. On most nights, on 95% of games, it's all in-game variance, which is why you absolutely have to go with the best of it, Matt. You have to go with the best of it, I love the challenge of handicapping games, of trying to find something in there, I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen. I know I can't do that. I know nobody in the world can do that, right? We're just looking for an edge, where there's value, where there's over and under reactions, which is why we're constantly referring to analytics. We're constantly referring to the AP and coaches polls in college basketball. Teams that are ranked are more valued in the market than unranked teams. Known teams have more market credibility than non-familiar teams. And the list of that sort of thing goes on and on, right? And that's what your focus has to be. If you start trying to handicap games like, this team's defense is good, or this team's power play is good against this team's weak penalty killing, you may win, and that's not why you won. That's not why. You won because, things just went your way, right? If you apply our theories of looking for value, looking for over and under reactions, looking for situational plays as opposed to breaking down the X's and O's, you are going to do a lot better. And nobody's going to tell you that. Nobody is honest about handicapping, predicting, what goes on in a game, right? Even in baseball. You're watching a baseball game, and the bases are loaded in one game, and the bases are loaded in a second game. And in the first game, a guy hits a shot, a rope, into right center field gap. And the right fielder tracks it down and he makes the greatest catch, right? Or it's just a line drive to the second baseman and he jumps, and makes a good catch. And they're out of the inning. Next guy up takes a swing and he touches the ball. They call it a swinging bunt, and it rolls to the third baseman very slowly, and everybody's safe, and a run scores. That's in-game variance. That's all it is. Right? And it could be the difference, right? Maybe the next guy comes up and hits a double. That's all in-game variance, and it goes on in every single baseball game, right? Bloop singles, a ball that lands 1 foot inside the line or a few inches outside the foul line, right? There's nobody that can predict that stuff, Again, you just have to play the value. You really have to play the value. And we're going to stress that all the time. We're going to stress again, never, ever pay for picks. These guys that are selling picks are ridiculous, And that Minnesota, New Orleans game on the weekend was another prime example of it, Touts guaranteeing a win or a 5-star play or a 10-star play or the lock of the year, right? And claiming 70% winners. It's impossible because you can't predict. Even if you're really good, because there's so much in-game variance in every game, you cannot hit 70%. It's impossible. It's like flipping a coin, right? If you can hit 70% and flipping a coin, you would make history and be featured on TV. You can't. Okay, you can't. And it's the same with sports betting. There's just way too many things going on way too much in-game variance to be able to predict that stuff, which is why our approach makes sense.
Another thing we like to do is look at over and under reactions. We talked last week, and I mean, the Minnesota Miracle, we've seen so much of that this week. I mean, everyone's looking ahead. How can Minnesota possibly win at Philadelphia? They look like they celebrated the Super Bowl last week, you know? Like, it was a big deal. You got grown men crying on the internet, you know? But people forget the situation the Eagles were in on Saturday when the Falcons were on the 2-yard line and Julio Jones touchdown pass away from winning that game. Like, it's so easy to forget, like, even just from one day to the next, what's happened. And now all of a sudden, Philadelphia, they come out this week with that line. We talk about people playing the hook and that sort of thing. So they open that line at 3.5. We are on the opposite side of a lot of people, and we say that is a dog number, a favorite number rather, because it encourages people to look at that and bet the underdog. And sure enough, this week that line opened at -3.5. And as we sit here, ahead of Sunday, it's now come off that hook, and now it's on to 3. The Eagles have got pounded all week.
It's very true, and Matt, you make great points, because 3.5 is a favorite number, 7.5 is a favorite number, 10.5 is a favorite number, where the opposite is true, like 2.5, like the key numbers 3, 7, and 10. A half point below or a half point above very often dictates what you should do in that game, right? So while we're not going to make any commitments right now, we like to see where the money goes, where the line settles, how things look. We are going to make a play, and right now we're leaning Minnesota for that very reason, just for that very reason, and we're looking for over and under reactions. Is Minnesota underpriced here based on what happened last week and based on the situation of them over-celebrating, right? We'll assess all that. Right now, we're leaning Minnesota for those reasons. The overreaction in the market to Minnesota having a Super Bowl-like celebration, and it's a great point, Matt, So those are the type of things we look for. And, Matt, I want to talk a little bit about in-game betting. It's really becoming popular, and we've touched on this before. And, we're always fine-tuning stuff, Matt. And, I've been playing NBA a lot, in-game betting, and I've pointed out my strategies. But you know what? Over the last month or so, I've been fine-tuning it a bit, and I want to share that. What I'm doing lately is I'm waiting for complete blowouts after 3 quarters. When you're betting in-game, you have to have a pretty good winning percentage because the juice is higher, and you have to overcome the juice. So you have to hit, probably around 60% to show a decent profit, or to have a good ROI. And I was playing before, and I was doing okay, but my ROI, my return on investment, wasn't high enough. But over the last month, I've been playing the 4th quarter only. And what that means is there may be a blowout at the half. Like, let's say a team is up 25 at the half, and the line is, you're taking back 22 points, and when the line is only 3 or 3.5, right? And it's very tempting to step in and do that. What I'm finding is that, teams that are up big in the second, sometimes they, take their gas off the pedal, but what I'm finding is that they usually come out strong in the second half too, that they don't let up until the end of the 3rd quarter. I'm finding that these games that are blowouts at the end of 3 quarters, the best bet is to bet the underdog or the team that's getting blown out in the 4th quarter. Because if a team is down 25 points going to the 4th quarter, like you think about the NBA or basketball split into quarters, a team usually scores between 22 and 30 points a quarter, right? Somewhere in that range. And if a team is up 25 points in the 4th, going to the 4th, they pretty much have that game locked up, right? And the strategy is to play the team that's down 25 or more going to the 4th quarter, right? And the reason for that strategy, which is why it's such a great bet or a high percentage bet, is because the team that has a 25-point lead, they rest their top guys, especially if they have a game the next day. They start giving second-tier players more minutes. And the team that's down that much, right, they don't want to get blown out. They don't want to get embarrassed. They're trying And more times than not, you combine those two things and you have a good run by that team losing, and they usually end up covering that number. So it's a great strategy. Everything is in place for that to work. It's not going to hit 100% of the time, but it is going to hit a high percentage of the time. So that's what I've been sticking to. 25 points or more, go into the fourth quarter, take the live betting underdog, and it's a high percentage return. In the NHL, we talked about this earlier, and I still think it applies. I still use it. It's a great bet. It's better when the road team is up a goal. So what I'm doing is on the in-game, you really have to be kind of on the ball with this because the line comes off the board with about 3 minutes to go in the game. But if you take the team that's up a goal or 2 goals, I actually prefer 2 goals, which I'll tell you about in a minute. If the team is up a goal, right, on the in-game betting, the line is -1.5 plus $1.50, $1.60, depending on the teams. If you have a road team that's a dog, like let's say Montreal is in Boston, for instance, and Montreal's up a goal with 3.5 minutes to go or 4 minutes to go, they would be -1.5 plus $2, right? Well, what's going to happen is the other team's going to pull a goalie. And Montreal's going to have a great chance to add an empty netter. And we're seeing a lot of empty netters this year, over the last couple of years, actually, because coaches are pulling the goalie earlier, right? So I think that's a great live bet. You can really narrow that down to just betting road teams when they're up a goal because the home teams are the favorite are much lower priced, right? So let's say Boston was up a goal in that same game against Montreal. They may be -1.5 plus $1.50, right? Whereas Montreal, if they're up a goal, they'll be -1.5 plus $2 or plus $2.20, right? So maybe just limit it to the underdog, the betting line underdog before the game, which is probably the better play. Another way you can fine-tune this or sharpen it is just to do teams that are up 2 goals, right? Because that line now becomes 2.5. So let's take that same Montreal-Boston game. Let's say Montreal's up 2 goals with 5 minutes to go. When teams are down 2 goals, they pull their goalie as well. The good thing about that, or the better thing, what I find, is that coaches are going to pull their goalie earlier, right? They're not going to wait till there's 2 minutes to go in the game or 1:50. They're going to do it at 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes, right? And that really gives you a great chance to score that empty netter. So you can fine tune it any way you want. Right now, I'm playing 2 goals. When the home or away team is up 2 goals, I like that very much because you have that extra time for the empty netter. And I'm playing the betting line underdog when they're up a goal. So those are 2 great ways to bet hockey. And there's a lot of plays because, so often a team is up 1 or 2 goals. So you may want to fine tune it to a certain way or a certain parameters that you want, but those are mine, and it's been working out well. So keep that in mind as also, Matt.
Well, live in-game betting, we love it. NCAA action as well, especially on the weekends. You get those big high-profile games, lots of lead swings, not even high-profile games, just anything that they can put on. I mean, basketball is all about lead changes. We find that, especially in college, the runs just come and go. We saw Miami blow a huge lead the other night. A 19-4 run one way and then a 15-0 run the other way. Like, it's just so... If you just look at the final score of that game and you see Duke wins by 5 or 6 or 7 points or whatever it was, you think, oh yeah, well, Duke just did what they do. Like, it doesn't tell the whole story, and there's so much opportunity in those games. And so with the NCAA tournament, of course, coming up in March, Brian and I launching a YouTube channel. We're going to try and do some live in-game betting webinars on there for you, show you what's going on, give you kind of the tips and the tricks that we like to use. Hey, Brian?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? Like, one of the things that I do, I really put a lot of effort. Matt and I both, we put a lot of effort into this. And, we're not saying to blindly follow us. I think it's worth reading what we're putting out there because we have done the work, right? We do the work. Trust me when I tell you that we do the work. We do research. Matt deserves a lot of credit. He really helps out with the NCAA basketball write-ups in the NFL. Incredible research this guy does. And, we spend hours a day. We don't just pick a game. We are digging through those numbers, And we also follow the beat reporters who gives you great insight into their team. But, one thing about beat reporters, and I like them. They have good information, but they're emotionally invested, right? That's why you don't really pay a lot of attention to. Listen, they're emotionally invested. Beat reporters are emotionally invested in the team they're covering, right? When you travel, when you hang out, when you spend time with, you want that team to win, right? Like you listen to the guys on TV, the announcers, they love their team. They absolutely love their own team, right? Beat reporters are the same. They love their own team. They love it, so their opinions are a little bit biased, right? Fan is short for fanatic, right? And fans of teams always think their team is better than it really is. Matt and I, we're not invested. We're not emotionally invested. I can safely say, and I think I speak for both of us, when I say we hate all your favorite teams. We hate them. Unless it's that night and we bet them, then we love them. We have no emotional attachment to any teams, right? I know you may say that, I hate the Rangers. I don't hate the Rangers. They're just a garbage team that are overvalued, right? So I'm going to be fading them a lot. Same with Nashville. People tell me I hate Nashville. I don't hate Nashville at all. I love the city. I love the people. I love the atmosphere. I love watching games from there. I just think I look at the numbers and I know they're very overvalued, very lucky team. So with us, you're getting the research. You're getting a genuine analysis of every single game we put out there. And every single game we put out there, I and Matt also wager on ourselves. We spend so much time into the research and trying to provide you with that edge. And just before closing, Matt, or getting out of here, I do want to say that, the golf season, football season is, pretty much over now. That gives us a lot more time to focus on some golf wagers. Watching golf on the weekend is a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll find some more winners this year. I think we hit 5 tournaments last year, which was great, and we're going to lose most. When we're picking golfers to win outright, we're going to lose most of those, because there's 100 to 150 golfers, and we're looking for 3 or 4 of them. Chances are we're going to lose, but we're looking to be on the first page of the leaderboard, maybe give us some options on the final day. But again, we do the research, and we appreciate the support very much. I really can't overstate it enough how much I appreciate all the support that we get, and we really hope to bring you some more. Listen, last year we won over 100 units. It was a really good year. We've had some good runs already this year. So just hope to keep it going, Matt, and continue to fight the good fight and spread the good word. Don't pay for picks, and don't trust anyone more than yourself.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to those golf plays. Make me think of the spring and the summer. Nice to see a little bit of green on TV anyway, which is, kind of nice considering the cold spells we've had here, of course, across not only the prairies, but down east too, Brian. I know a lot of the cold fronts start here, and then they get pushed down there, and then it gets real nasty as well. So, yeah, no good, Brian, no good. But we're looking forward to golf. Give Brian a follow on Twitter, @SportsWagers3. The show, of course, Sports Wagers Pod. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/sportswagers. Instagram for you kiddies, Sportswagers.ca. That's, of course, all lowercase. We'll post up a picture of the front page there to give you a little sneak peek, taste of the picks, and then, of course, you log on, you read the write-ups, and then you make your decisions. Finally, Brian, like we said, we're on YouTube. We're looking at some webinars, some live videos, some in-game betting, seminars, all that sort of good stuff. Just search for Sportswagers.ca in the YouTube bar. Once you get 100 subscribers, they'll give you a custom login. So we're working on that, looking forward to that. So please subscribe. And with that, Brian, that's about all I got. Anything you want to add?
No, that's it, Matt. We'll see you next week.
Perfect. All right. For Brian Sherwood Steinberg, I'm Matthew Finney. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Sportswagers.ca podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe. For free daily picks, visit Sportswagers.ca.